This media is brought to you by Polyscope.
In the realm of tomorrow, where tech meets mind, we ponder, we dream.
Do the intro. Thank you so much for joining us here on Think Future. My name is Chris Kalaboukis, and once again, we're coming at you live from deep in the heart of Silicon Valley, California. Today, we have a very special guest. Why don't you tell us a little bit, introduce yourself, tell us a little about yourself, and tell us what you're passionate about.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chris. So it's fantastic to be here. My name is Nicolas Pokorny. I'm the CEO of Mammoth Leadership Sciences. And I am super passionate about leadership and the evolutionary and biological background about leadership, because we know a lot about leadership, and there is a lot going on based on how people think and their opinion about leadership. But in fact, there are so many facts out there about leadership. So I'm very passionate about getting that up and up front and send it to people that I think the world is a better place if we know more about why we lead, how we lead, and and everything with what comes with it.
Oh, this is fascinating. So when did you first start doing this? Like, tell us about the history of when you got to this where you are today.
So the history is I'm a trained neuroscientist, just a biologist and a PhD in neuroscience and neuroethology. And I very early on had the great honor to lead people in a professional setting, in a certain industry, which has nothing to do with what I'm doing here with regards to leadership. But I had the honor to lead teams of all sizes, from very few, like two or three, to up to a couple hundreds in different countries. And what I found out over time was that my training in neuroscience, how humans behave and why they behave, and the biological reasons, why we are leading, why we are behaving as human beings as we do, that theoretical background knowledge from my studies, from my research, helped me a lot. To my surprise, actually, in my professional experience in leading people for, I don't know, maximizing revenue, market share, and all of these things. So over time, I'm doing this in 30 years, and over time, I started to take notes, did more research, and I thought, well, hold on a second. In my professional life, in working big companies, when I'm asked to lead people, I'm not really trained to lead people.
Mm.
A good example is, I think, a classical way how you move up the corporate ladder. You do a job very well. In my case, I was a product manager.
I don't know if you do a job too well, you're usually stuck in that position, right? You have to do it just a
you,
little.
yeah, but at some point, when you do your job well,
Yeah.
and somebody then gives you the next step. In my case, it was product manager, and I organized conferences, and I could do very nice detail aids. And at some point, my manager came to me and said, "Hey, you're ready now to do the next step." And then I became a district sales manager, which then was I was asked to lead 8 people.
Mm.
So being somebody who is doing a nice detail aid to leading 8 people is a complete different thing. But
Oh
I
yeah.
qualified, right? It's completely different. And I qualified, quote unquote, through my ability to organize conferences for leading people. And there is a bit of a disconnect, because then when I got into this role, I was not trained what is actually really needed to lead people, which is a
Mm.
completely different thing. And that is where I started to take notes. I wrote a book, which is called The Mammoth in the Room. I have it here. I don't know if I can show it.
Mm.
Um, right. So I wrote a book about it, and then um, I thought, okay, the book is out there. That's great, but maybe I want to teach it. Maybe I want to talk about it more. So I have a weekly podcast about it's called The Mammoth in the Room, and I'm also developing a leadership course where I want to try to put all of these things together that is practical and people can just use it.
Yeah, it's you're absolutely right that the skill set required to lead and the skill set required to be sort of an individual contributor is completely different.
Yeah,
But if people
right.
are thrust into this leadership role and they're really not given any tools whatsoever to try and
Yeah,
get to that point.
exactly.
It's like, what was the most surprising thing that you realized? Like, how did you apply your neuro training to leadership in that moment?
Well, I think, I mean, I give you a personal example, and it was actually an example where I learned about myself um,
Mm,
a lot. So I got this first move becoming a district sales manager, leading 8 people, and I was invited to a training where I certain skill requirements were needed to fulfill a task. And because I was this new leader, I really tried so hard to fulfill this task. And I was completely unqualified for that.
mm.
But I tried harder and harder and harder, and actually pissed everyone off because I was trying so hard and was trying to be stubborn and trying to solve it myself. But what I actually learned
Did
through
you knew
this, and
what
that was
leadership was at that moment? I mean, you kind of like you
absolutely not.
exactly.
Absolutely not. Right. So the outcome of this was obviously it was not about fulfilling this task. It's about learning to know when you need to lead and when you need to follow. So that was a classical example where I, as a leader, because I was a leader, thought I need to lead. But the actual outcome was what the actual real thing would have been to say, well, you know what, guys? So the leadership decision would have been at that time, I'm really not qualified for this. You have to do this because you are much better than that.
Hmm.
And that is one of the fundamental learnings which I acquired over time. Again, a lot with failure as well. That leaders do not always have to lead, not at all.
Mm,
Leaders also need to understand when they need to follow, because the human behavior of leadership is not just something which we just developed out of nothing. There is a reason, a biological reasons why we lead and why we follow. And these are the things which I learned very early on. And then at some point, I thought, you know what, we want to put this together into a book, into a course, into a podcast, because we think when we do that, when we expose people to that, people will understand better um, about what leadership actually really requires.
yeah. So what do you think? So you've been in the business, you've been in this business for what did you say, 30 years? Is that right?
30 years in a professional business. This whole thing about Mammoth Leadership Sciences is is at the moment something which is developing as a side hustle. It has
Mm,
nothing to do with my professional, actually, day by day business. I just think I want to contribute with my insight into leadership to the greater good. Obviously, that's what I'm planning to do.
so, but you've been in leadership roles for a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I wanted to ask you, but compared to when you first started and today, I mean, how much has leadership changed? Has it changed a lot? Is it still the same or like where are we at?
Well, I believe leadership. Um, I don't think it changes. Leadership has changed in general. Think about it in that way. Um, there is a biological reason why we lead.
Mm,
It's fundamentally if um, two or more members of a species trying to solve a coordination issue, right? As human beings, what we had to solve as coordination issues was movement,
mm,
because when we had out hunted a certain area, or we had harvested everything we could eat, we had to move on. So it was movement. Where do we go, right? And then the question becomes, um, um, where do we move? And then how do we move? And who moves first? And this is where some people then took the leadership, and others followed. So that leadership behavior in itself, moving into a certain direction, even in a company moving in a certain direction, has not really changed. And also, um, what requires to lead hasn't changed. I think what is changing is that people start to know more and more about it. And the interesting fact is this, that there's so much research about human behavior and leadership behavior. And you can in psychology universities you can go to, you can in the books have written about this, publications whatever, but it's really not um, some like made available practically for people who are in the business. In my case, in the biopharmaceuticals, 30 years ago when I started this, um, nothing was really available for us at that time.
Mm.
But the I would say the the fact that leadership is so universal, um, we need to somehow get some bearing points where we anchor ourselves and then use this knowledge and then move on from that. And that I don't think will ever change. It is just the knowledge about the people who do it.
So when you think about the original leaders, like how did they differentiate themselves from, I mean, if you say leadership in that sort of like in the core hasn't changed because it's sort of a human
Yeah.
intuition thing. How did the leaders choose themselves? Like how were the leaders chosen then and how are the leaders chosen now? Is
Yeah.
it similar?
I well, there of course have been there have been changes over centuries, and I
Hmm.
think the best way of describing this is um, in the past, and when I'm talking about past, I mean as the genus Homo, so Homo sapiens, we developed around 250, 350,000 years ago. This was a fiercely egalitarian organization in small groups originally, and there was task-related leadership.
Mm.
Um, so you came to a river, you had to cross the river. Who can build a boat? Somebody know how to build a boat. You you build a boat, you go over that river, and then after that, um, that person who took the lead for building a boat was not the leader anymore because something else was required.
So somebody
So it
who
was
had the skill required at the moment stepped up
yes,
and
yes,
became okay.
exactly. So it was task-related leadership, and then the leadership was changed to somebody else who took the next task and led it.
Right.
Over time, when groups became bigger, it was important to develop a certain hierarchy simply from a coordination perspective. Um, but at the end, it was still fiercely task related that the ones who knew about how to build a boat led the boat building, the ones who led, I don't know, farming led where to farm and find the best soil. Um, it changed a lot in the industrial revolution because then things became so big, and then leaders today, if you think about it, they are chosen based on um, a certain talent, obviously, but then they are leading all of these things, right? So they are leading. The guy who is the boat builder might be chosen to be the chief executive officer, but he's still in his core is a boat builder,
Yeah.
right? So then that person needs to say, when we're building houses, there are two ways of going about this. It's a, I'm the chief executive officer. Now I also know how to build a house and tells everyone how to build a house, and then things go down.
Yeah.
Or the better leaders would say, I am the chief executive officer, but my core is building boats. So you, Chris, you are the actual leader when we're building houses, and then I follow you and your advice.
Yeah.
Um,
So you
and I
find the
think
house builder within your organization. So somewhere in your
exactly, or
organization.
you
Yeah.
exactly, and I think this is where good leaders separate from um, bad leaders or leaders who are not doing a good job. And I want to be very careful in the wording because I also, as I've said before, made these mistakes that I was put into a situation where I like once at one point I changed organization, became head of a huge sales organization, in a different therapeutic area long ago, 20 years back. And it was the first time for me to lead through multiple layers. It was the first time for me to lead in these therapeutic areas, which I didn't really have a clue about. But I was put in this role, and then my management started to tell me, "Well, lead, and you're such a great leader, and show what you can, and give people the." And I felt extremely uncomfortable because I had this pressure to basically lead. We are expecting our people to lead and to show their leadership,
Hmm.
but the real um, the the real task at that time was to learn, to not lead, but to follow. And I think
Exactly.
that difference uh, is 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 very subtle, and we want to explain from a behavioral perspective why it is not bad to follow, even when leaders are asked to lead. Right? It's an interesting thing, right? I mean, if you look at LinkedIn, everyone is a leader, right? Everyone's a leader. And
That's right.
and and I am a great leader according to my leadership to my LinkedIn profile, which has been voted um, I don't know, from LinkedIn as one of at some point as top 5% of all LinkedIn profiles. And you see leadership everywhere, and I get contacted all the time. But the real learning I did was that um, I need to lead and I also need to follow. Now, I have not once in my LinkedIn profile the word I'm a great follower.
Hmm.
It would be much better. I think it would be much more honest if I say I know how to follow, but
Yeah.
I would not be contacted because we're all looking for leaders. And it's actually interesting, isn't it? Because when you say you are a follower, it has a kind of a negative connotation, isn't it?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. No, it's interesting you should
Although,
mention that
yeah, go ahead.
I have a very similar story like that. Back when I used to do consulting work, I would be coming into new companies, and I always had this period of observation, right? So I would like, even though the people who hired me say, you got to come in there and you got to lay down the law, right?
Yeah,
That was their perception of what leadership was.
yeah,
Come in,
yeah,
lay down the law. And I'm like, no, no, no. I come in and I observe. I
yeah,
observe and I follow and I note what everybody's saying. And then you start making changes and suggestions and guide. But the immediate perception was come in there and, manage, not lead, right? They
yeah.
wanted somebody to manage, not lead. And that's not how you get people to do things.
Exactly.
It's completely against, if you really want people to help you to follow you, then that's not the example that you want to set. So
Exactly.
it's
And
exactly
I
what you're
think
saying.
And what we're trying to do here is with this Mammoth Leadership Sciences and the academy we are launching very soon. And the course is we're not just telling people follow. We basically roll it up from the get to explain step by step by step the evolutionary reasons why we follow, why human behavior is happening as human behavior, what it is, and with that drive insight so that once we come to the conclusion, hey, here is where you need to um, follow, or here is where, whatever it is, right? People can connect back to the why, and then they don't feel bad about following,
Mm,
right? Because I mean, my personal journey was I get into a leadership position. The first thing I do is I put up my slides and I show where we all need to go. And I put on the company, this is the market share, and this is the whatever the vision and the North Star, blah, 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 blah. Um, and then that was my original approach, and it's still the approach of so many people. And then you think that the others will follow. I have changed this completely. When I
mm,
come into a new role, my first question to the people is not about the company. It is about what do you want to achieve? You are a part of my team, right?
mm,
I have 8 people, I have 6 people, I have 10 people. What is you want to achieve? What is it? Why are you in this game? Right? That I want to understand first. And then I try to combine that. Then I once I understand that, I find ways how the company goals fit into these personal goals,
mm.
because there's so many companies out there which say we are all moving in one direction, but the real reason why people are there is just because they get a paycheck.
Exactly.
But if you really
Let's be
do get
real.
it right, But if you get it right, and I got it right at some teams, I got it right, more right than in others. Um, I had people who were completely committed to the company course because they could develop their own life, their own leadership, their own um, ideas of life and how they want to about their career, how they think about the career. It was completely embedded in that company goals, and that always has to lead. Um, because the individuals are which make the group, and only the group then um, can reach the goals perspective. But the people need to know why they have the skin in the game, and that is what we're trying to do with this, explaining the people, explaining um, in a way that people really understand the why from a behavioral perspective. I think and that's missing. I do believe that's missing.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that I think that alignment, that's when you see good leadership. Is then when that alignment occurs, because there's plenty of cases where you don't get that alignment. They don't even think about that alignment. This is like this is what the corporation expects of you, and that's it,
Yeah, yeah.
right? You don't get
Because
that at all.
it is actually quite complex because if you think about it, when you are leading a team, there are three things you need to navigate as a team leader. One, um, you know that everyone who is working in this team, first and foremost, tries to secure the personnel and family's well-being. They want to have a paycheck. They're here because they
Yeah,
they they need to work, right? That's one thing.
yeah.
The other thing is they also need to collaborate because um, because no one can fulfill his or her own objectives alone. So you have people who are working for themselves, for their families. They need to collaborate, and then there's a third aspect. They are in competition to each other because if
Hmm.
I move on at the end of the year and I have eight team members, maybe one of the team members want to be the one who follows me and is
Mm,
maybe then becoming the team leader,
mm,
right? Because that has higher status, more salary, better development in the company, higher career perspective. So you have people working for themselves. They need to collaborate, and they are in competition to each other. That's
hmm.
a hell of a challenge for a leader to get that into a balance. And
Exactly.
that is what I think people need to know more about how to do this, because it's not only about gut feel. That there is a lot you can learn in what's out there, literature and everything. We put this together and we try to make this practical for people. That's our goal.
Excellent. So it's time to think like a futurist. It's the year 2036. Where are we going to be in 10 years? Now, you mentioned earlier, it's interesting. You mentioned leadership hasn't changed much. So I'm thinking in 10 years it hasn't changed much itself. But with AI, the technologies and all
Yeah,
sorts of things
yeah, yeah,
happening in that space, I mean, where do you see leadership in 10 years because AI is basically disruptive of
yeah,
everything.
yeah. That's
So where do you see leadership in 10 years?
yeah. I think um, look, that's a very it's a long question. I mean, hey, I haven't because I haven't put. I personally, I mean, I don't want to come in because it wouldn't be true to say I know how AI will influence leadership aspect of the future. I only know one thing, and this is where I would like to where the world to be um, in 10 years. Um, the behavior of of leadership is something which is deeply embedded in our evolutionary heritage. We
Hmm.
have decided it is better to lead and others to follow than everyone is doing everything by his or her own and there is no leadership. That doesn't obviously make sense because otherwise that would be the behavior we're having today.
Yeah,
No,
it's human nature.
today
Human nature
it's
requires.
human nature, right?
Yeah.
So I think the future will hopefully look like that we just know more about it and we
Mm,
just be more reflective. And maybe, you know what, AI might help on this because AI will be able, with AI, the one thing I like about AI, with maybe some things I don't like so much, but is that you can digest a lot more information and bring this to some succinct steps. So, you can, and I do believe AI might help us to just be more precise in fulfilling tasks.
Mm.
I don't think that I hope that AI will never replace any human leadership decisions. But maybe that's a too romantic view. Maybe we are
I think
going in that
it
direction.
depends on the level within the organization.
Yeah,
Maybe simpler decisions might be automatable. But I think all of
yeah,
that. See, the interesting thing about AI is that it's patterned after humanity. So whatever AI puts out is something that we've
yeah,
already generated ourselves. So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a product of our humanity.
yeah. It is. It is. I mean, this is a. I haven't made my mind up about this. I only can work with analogs, even when I talk with me about this thing, about myself. And the analog is when when people invented cars, right? There were people who said, "Well, this is bad because you can crash, you whatever, right?" Um, or nuclear energy. Everything is which is invented can be used for the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
That's
So I
right.
think it's the same thing here, right? I mean, if we are responsible with what we learn with AI. And you're absolutely right. What AI gives us back, because we actually taught AI to do all these things. It all has been already invented. If we are responsible with it, then I do think it will have a positive impact for the people who want to have it a positive impact. But on the
Hmm.
other hand, if it takes a life on its own, and if it's used by people who only want to take out of the system more than they were prepared to put in, and just to increase their own power, then it's bad. I mean, that's, I think, same with cars, right? I mean, it's, you can crash and die, or you can just go from A to B and be safely there and be happy.
Yeah, and I think people forget that it's a tool. They think they put more emphasis into it than it actually has, because it's a tool like anything else. And like you're saying, cars, all of these things, all of these technologies that we've invented are tools. They're supposed to lessen our burdens, right? And
Yeah,
when they don't lessen our burdens, that's when they become problematic. But
yeah,
we obviously get more out of them than they take out of us, because we're still using them and we still want them around. Otherwise, we'd stop using them. That's
yeah,
human.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So, do you think that sometime in the next 10 years we'll actually get to an organization that has some AI as leadership?
Wow, that's a loaded question. It's a good. Well, if you think about it, I don't know if leader if AI could lead. Well, I think AI could lead
Mm,
in theory. The question is, what would be the guardrails? Is there a human who actually looks over these decisions? Because if you think about it, when these automated um, uh, trading signals, where something happens in the market and then automated things are, you know, traded, and um, certain. I'm not an expert at all in this, but it doesn't need a person in certain market situations to then sell or buy stocks, right?
yeah.
So it's already happening to some extent. The question um, is is it possible that artificial intelligence can just take over a human chief executive officer, and become basically a chief executive officer just by itself? Or yeah, it would be an it itself. I hope not. I mean,
Yeah.
but
I
maybe,
don't think you couldn't. I don't think you could have an AI making all decisions. You probably have to have some human input into that. But who knows? Maybe at some point, if it starts doing really well and it can mimic human decisions, then maybe bits of leadership could be handed over to it. I mean, you already see people like creating like messages to their employees, which
yeah,
obviously have been generated by AI, right?
yeah, yeah,
See, I've seen these. This one on LinkedIn was hilarious. Somebody was talking about an all hands meeting. They were having an all hands meeting in Vancouver, and they were talking about how awesome the all hands meeting was, because everybody finally got together in real life to see
yeah,
each other. But the post that was generated was obviously AI. So the CEO used AI to generate the post, and then the responses were all AI. And I thought to myself, is there any humans left on LinkedIn, or is it all
Yeah.
AI?
Yeah, I think the analog you mentioned about the tool, it's a tool, and
Mm,
and whenever new tools are available, I think there is a certain time period where we are confused. I am actually confused about AI, and not in a negative way. When I say I'm confused in the sense of um, what can it do for me, and what is too much, and when do I stop, and when do I start? Right? I mean,
mm.
if I want to ask AI, give me you know 10 papers um, about leadership psychology written between 2015 and 2020, and give me a summary paper out of this. It does that for me. That's fantastic, right?
Yeah,
In the past, 10 years ago, I was the one who actually went into these online libraries and put that down. You downloaded these things, and then I read it, and then I wrote it down, and then I did it,
yeah,
right? And it took me
it took a
forever,
lot of
right?
work.
And it took a lot of work, right? Now this can, but then once this is there, there is this little thing at the end which says, I might have done many errors.
Mm,
You have to double check it, right? So then I'm confused because okay, so now you've given me these 10 things, and you did this, and you did this in, I don't know, 10 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, and now I should check this if you're actually right. How do I do this?
yeah,
Should I then now reread all of this and come on, right? So I'm confused.
yeah,
Um, and then how do I even double check that? Because if you send me then this report, how do I know if it's really true?
yeah,
Right? And is so there are positives and negatives, and I'm in this phase, and I think this phase will be, for me, it will take some time where I have my mind up exactly how do I use this tool.
mm,
Again, great analog. When I started to drive a car when I was 18 years old. I'm from Austria, so we're not starting with 16, we're starting with 18. My dad gave me this car, and I started driving. And I was, of course, heavily confused because all I could do is go from A to B and try to be as safe as possible. Over time, over the years, I started to learn what I can do with this thing and what I cannot do with this thing because I'm not a Formula One champion.
yeah,
Maybe when I was 18, I thought I might be one and made my mistakes. So I think there is this time of where you figure out how these tools works for you. Um, I don't like a world where the car drives me and
mm.
it decides where I go. And I'm freaking out when my watch tells me when I'm going into the car that it's 10 minutes to home. And I go, how the heck does my watch know that I'm going home? Right.
I
So
know because it
that's,
watches your patterns. It
yeah,
is kind of
exactly.
freaky, but eventually it'll get to the point where it'll be useful, right? And then once it's useful, then we just say, okay, we'll just go with it. We'll just use that. But I don't think it's there. It's not quite there yet. We're getting
No,
close.
it's not. I mean, at least I want to go home. I don't want to watch it. Don't want to ask my watch where do I want to go, and my watch tells me I go home, and then okay, I go home.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I don't know if anyone has a clear answer. I think people who say they know exactly where this goes, I I'm not sure I would believe this, um, because I mean there are obviously people who know much more about it than I do, but I'm at the moment trying to find the sweet spot what works for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same for most of us. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
I think the best way is through LinkedIn, and then I wrote a book, The Mammoth in the Room, which is available everywhere. I have a on LinkedIn. You can find my webpage, also the link to the podcast, weekly podcast about neuroscience and history, where we explain human behavior in a neuroscientific way. At the moment, I'm featuring a some episodes about Queen Elizabeth I, and
Mm,
we are actually it's a podcast where we go through the history of great people. We had Julius Caesar, we had Napoleon, now Queen Elizabeth I. Throughout her life, what were the challenges she had, and we're trying to put a neurobiological spin to it, why certain decisions happened at that time. It's actually pretty fascinating when you people tell me when you read it, when you listen to it, simply because we're trying to make sense of human behavior of the past, trying to identify why this has happened. And what we believe is that when people listen to this and think about this, they can apply this to today's and to their own challenges they have every day in their own leadership.
I love it. I'm going to go subscribe right after this. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you very
Talk to
much,
you
Chris.
soon. Thank you.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Pixels and philosophies merge and mold, a future untold, unseen.